So let me introduce you Hans de Bal. He's been working with document management system for a long while, so he has a lot of experience. First with a different system, and then he saw the light and started to work with Alfresco since 4 years or 5 years. So he knows what he's talking about, so Hans is now the next speaker.
Oh, sorry. Does everybody hear me? Okay, it should be better. Hi. Welcome to this session in which I will talk about the pitfalls and best practices when using multiple share-based clients on the same backend repository. Maybe first an introduction. My name is Hans de Bal. I work with Amplexor, an Alfresco partner, for 10 years now. Like Boris said, first couple of years I worked with Documentum. Don't shout at me. But 4 years ago I switched to Alfresco, I saw the light, and that's still my main focus today. I am married and have one daughter, and I'm active on Twitter. So what's on the agenda for the next 20 minutes? Multiple share clients, one repository, like the title says. Simple architecture, but some different scenarios possible. Then the bulk of the presentation, pitfalls and best practices, and in the end, some Q&A. Okay, multiple share clients, one repository. Like I said, a simple architecture, but some scenarios possible. Suppose your customer or company decides to roll out Alfresco company-wide, globally, as a collaboration platform for collaborating within projects, within departments, across departments, stuff like that. For that business case, for those functional requirements, out-of-the-box share covers 90–95% of the functional requirements and is used out of the box. And even to ease future upgrades, management decides that no customizations are needed or even allowed. Now within that company, there is a department which does have a specific business case. For example, case management, contract management, stuff like that. And to implement that solution, customizations are needed to the share client. Company already has Alfresco, decides, okay, we're going to implement case management on Alfresco, but customizations are needed. Second scenario, there are two departments within that company, both with each their own business case, both need a separate customized share client. So we have two share clients, both customized. Now why do we need to split share? Why can't we just use the same share for out-of-the-box functionalities and for the customized application? Well, if you're implementing something like a case management system, this is a screenshot of a project we did last year. You see that customization can be quite heavy, large and complex. So it might just be too difficult to incorporate the out-of-the-box functionalities and the customized functionalities within the same share. Now, a second question you might have is, why don't we also split the Alfresco? Why don't we also split the backend? So we just have two Alfresco instances, two share instances, no interference possible. Well, also there, a couple of arguments. First one, if your company is using an enterprise edition, it's the license cost, of course. It's not cheap. Your company doesn't want to pay the same license twice. Second argument is that your system administrator, he doesn't want to maintain two repositories. He just wants one consolidated repository, easy to maintain. Third argument is a search. It's not because you have two share clients that you don't want the search to be company-wide. So it's quite possible that your user wants to search in the out-of-the-box share, but he also wants to find documents which were uploaded using the customized share. So if you don't want to set up replication or anything, you need one repository in the back. And then a fourth argument, if you want to install, for example, the Outlook plugin, the Outlook plugin can only connect to one repository at a time. And you don't want to ask your end user to switch the connection settings in the Outlook plugin depending on the context he or she is working in. So that's how we end up with this simple architecture. Okay, now the pitfalls and best practices. Challenge number one. application-specific workflows. So we have our case management, contract management, customized application solutions, which contains a couple of custom workflows. Now, what do we want in our customized share? We only want to see our custom workflows, because for maybe the out-of-the-box workflows don't have any meaning within the application context we're working in. Now, what would be the initial action to take? In your web script call to the backend, you use the exclude parameter to exclude the out-of-the-box workflows. That's going to work fine for your customized share. Now, suppose you do that, and then tomorrow, company decides, oh yeah, we want to roll out Alfresco or an out-of-the-box share company-wide. Then all of a sudden, your custom workflows, which you defined in your custom application, your custom workflows all of a sudden also appear in your out-of-the-box share. That's also something you don't want, because those custom workflows only have relevance within your custom applications. They don't have any relevance within the out-of-the-box application. So what's the best practice here? A couple of steps. First one is we need to differentiate the custom workflows from the out-of-the-box workflows. One way to do that is to use a naming convention when you define your custom workflows. Add a certain prefix to your workflow definition, for example. Second step is then to extend the backend web script to accept an extra optional parameter, for example, include custom workflows. Now that could be a boolean. If it's true, it's only going to return your custom workflows. If it's false or missing, it's only going to return the out-of-the-box workflows. And then third step, add that extra parameter to your web script call in your customized share. Now, how does it look like in the code? Maybe I didn't choose the best colors for that one. If that parameter is available, it's on the top, and it's true, and your workflow definition doesn't start with your prefix, so it's an out-of-the-box workflow, that workflow definition is excluded from the result set. In the else part, if that parameter is false or missing, so that's a call from the out-of-the-box share, that parameter is missing, and your workflow definition does start with your prefix, exclude it from the result set. So that way, our out-of-the-box share will only show the out-of-the-box workflows, and our customized share will only show the custom workflows. Challenge number 2, and that's maybe the biggest one, personal dashboards. What do we want? We want for each share client to have a different personal dashboard. Because, for example, our custom application might contain some custom dashlets, which only have relevance within the custom application, and our out-of-the-box share doesn't even know those dashlets. Now, what's the pitfall? If you don't do anything, there is going to be an interference between the share clients. If you make changes to your share dashboard in the first share, your second share will be infected. And if you're using, for example, custom dashlets, the personal dashboard on your second share might even be corrupt, or you get results you don't expect. So we don't want any interference between the share clients when it comes to personal dashboards. Now, before we go into the best practice here, we need to understand a little bit more about how dashboard configuration is stored within Alfresco. A dashboard configuration consists of a couple of XML files. Those XML files, they define the layout of your dashboard, which dashlets should appear, the position of those dashlets on your dashboard, stuff like that. Now, if you look at the name of those XML files, you see that I created 2 dashboards there, one for administrator, one for a standard user. You see that the only variable in there is the username, admin and Hans. So that explains why both share clients use the same dashboard configuration files. There's no indication in there which share client created or which share client modified those files last. So every share client is going to use those same XML files. That also explains the interference between your share clients. Now, how is the dashboard created? every time you browse to a URL which has the pattern user something dashboard, the user dashboard interceptor class intervenes, and it's going to check if your dashboard already exists in the repository or not. If it doesn't exist, it's going to be created. If it does exist, it's going to be fetched. And that fetching is done by the model object service class. Important to know here is that both those classes are share classes. They're not Alfresco classes, they're share classes. So we can modify them, we can extend them per share instance. Now there are two possible best practices here. The first one is the easiest one. Now suppose you have your custom share application and management decides that every user in that application should have the same dashboard configuration. The user cannot start modifying his dashboard. Management wants every user to have the same display, the same user interface for that dashboard. How can we implement that? Well, you remember those couple of XML files? Well, in your development environment, you can manually create them and load them on Bootstrap. And as a second step, you overwrite the model object service get page, and every time it tries to fetch a page with the object ID user that starts with user and ends with dashboard, you're going to overwrite that page ID, and you're going to refer it to your fixed dashboard configuration. Remember, this is the class only in one share. So the out-of-the-box share doesn't do this, and he's going to use the configuration files for that specific user, while your customized share is redirected to your fixed configuration files. Now suppose a fixed dashboard isn't an option and you want configurable dashboards per share client. Then you need to do an extra action. And that's to override the user dashboard interceptor pre-handle method. So every time it's going to check if your dashboard already exists, and if it's going to create it, it's normally only going to use the user ID as a variable. In here, we add a prefix. In here, it's custom underscore. We add a prefix to make the distinction for the share client. You can use a different prefix for each share client. So that way, we're going to create dashboard configuration files per share client. And then as a second step, you need to overwrite again the model object service get page methods, the same as we did with the fixed dashboard solution. And as a side note, to overwrite both classes, you need to overwrite the bean definition, of course. Challenge number 3, out-of-the-box dashlets. What do we want to achieve? We want to use out-of-the-box dashlets on our customized share. Out-of-the-box dashlets like my tasks and my documents. Well, if you don't do anything, those out-of-the-box dashlets will return everything it can find. It isn't aware of your application scope. It's going to return you tasks of workflows which don't have any meaning maybe don't have any meaning inside your customized share or inside your custom application. So what's the best practice here? Again, the same as with the workflows. You need to add an extra parameter to your backend REST call to tell your backend, I want application-specific data or I want general data. Now with the workflows, we use the naming convention, but naming convention isn't the only differentiator you can use. Location where your data is stored might be a differentiator, or if a certain aspect is available, or if your application data is of a certain type, for example. Challenge number 4, share actions. What do we want to do in our customized share? We want to hide certain actions. Now, it might be tempting to use action evaluators for that. Action evaluators are defined in share and are expressions or Java classes which define if your action should be enabled or disabled. Now, suppose you would implement your share evaluator, your action evaluator, and tomorrow company decides to roll out Alfresco company-wide out of the box. Well, then all of a sudden, in your out-of-the-box share, if it's a normal standard action, your action becomes available all of a sudden on the data. You didn't want that action to be available, and your document can be deleted, for example, which is something you don't want. So it might be painful, but the best practice here is to use permissions. But do be careful with permissions. Think about it, communicate with your customer, because if you start using custom permissions, custom permission roles, you start breaking inheritance, you start building up a really complex behavior on which permissions should be defined on which folder or document. It could become quite complex quite soon. And that's something you don't want. It needs to be maintainable. So that's maybe a little side note for that. So I'm done a little bit early, but those were some of the major pitfalls we encountered. There are probably more, but I think these couple of challenges may make it more clearly on what kind of problems, what kind of issues you might encounter. So we do have some time for some questions, if there are some.
Thank you very much for the talk. So you have questions there. You have Landry.
Hi. Do you ever consider using share module extensibility instead of having a separate share application? Because I have come across your situation in the past, and I found that just leveraging the share extensibility modules was more than sufficient to achieve almost everything you listed there.
Yeah, we did use the share extension points like best practices define. But like the dashboard configuration is something you can't, like, that is the best solution we found to, for example, to fix that dashboard issue. Also with the workflows, yeah, you need to change something in the backend to direct which results that you need to return. But we did use best practices and the share extension points, like the, yeah.
Yeah, because like for instance, actions, you can leverage that with the share extensibility module to just change the doclib actions, and I can't remember what I did with workflows off the top of my head, but I was able to do it. And
yeah, but you need to remember what I said about the out-of-the-box share. Well, okay, if you can configure it using the XML, that's okay. But sometimes your customer, at least that was the case with us, your customer doesn't want you to touch the out-of-the-box share. It's not even part of your project, the out-of-the-box share. So that's something you can't even touch. So not even with XML configuration or custom configuration files.
Okay. Any other questions? Yeah. There.
Hey, my name is Sujay. So when you say you have different share instances, are those different clients for you, or?
Well, they are used in different contexts. So one is really for your custom application, your case management application, where you can create cases which go through different statuses, which can go through different workflows and stuff like that. And next to that is an out-of-the-box share, or another customized share with a different context, a different user business case.
Because my thought was, why didn't we use the multi-tenant system in that case?
Sorry, I didn't get
the multi-tenant system, what we have. Multi-tenant.
I don't have any experience with multi-tenancy, but I thought this is really for the same client. I thought multi-tenancy was more for if you're working for different clients using the same repository. But I don't have any experience with multi-tenancy, sorry.
Still some questions? No? I have a question. So the notifications are being sent by the repo. So the repo has the configuration about the URL. How do you do it? Because you have two different shares and they probably have two different URLs. So when you send a notification or like the daily update, this has been modified. How do you decide which URL you are going to use or which share? Or the share host variable in Alfresco global properties.
Well, for the out of the box, for the custom application, there's no possibility to have like site invitations. The concept of sites wasn't visible for the end user. So during Bootstrap, we just created some sites. Some groups were automatically collaborator or consumer for those sites, and the concept of inviting people to sites wasn't known there. In the out of the box share, it was, of course, and well, that's that part we didn't touch. So that's going through the customized, the out-of-the-box share.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so thank you very much again. Please give an applause to Hans. Thanks a lot.